Why, hello there. Stevie Coyle here at Mighty Fine Guitars. Thank you for stopping in yet again for the Friday Noontime webcast featuring me. Next week we have a special guest I want to tell you about right away. Next week our special guest, boys and girls, will be Glenn Pomjanek, vastly better known as Glenn Houston, late of the band Houston Jones. An amazing gentleman who will be joining us. You really want to tune in for this one because you perhaps have never seen anything quite like this. Glenn Houston plays a right-handed guitar upside down and backwards. It's quite remarkable. He takes a regular old guitar like this, turns it around like this, and plays it real good, real good. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, like Hendrix. No, Hendrix played a left-handed guitar. He took a right-handed guitar, strung it left-handed, and played it left-handed. The big strings were up here and the skinny strings were down here. So that's a lefty setup. Glenn can play upside down and backwards. He also teaches, and when he teaches, he teaches right-handed on a right-handed guitar. Very confusing, I know. All will become clear next week at noon on the Friday webcast. And we have Glenn Pomjanek, Houston, in here for the Friday Noontime webcast. Today, I thought I'd chat a little bit about, of course, whatever you have in mind. Your questions will be answered, your comments, your any invective hurled from the back of the room, by all means, will be dealt with summarily. But a lot of folks come in a shop like this, and I have lots of small builders here. You know, there's lots and lots of individual makers represented here. There are a couple of Martins, you know, frequently, a couple of Gibsons occasionally, some Santa Cruz, some Collings, some of the kind of big production houses and the smaller production houses like Collings and Santa Cruz. But most of the guitars in here are small maker. So a lot of folks come in and say, you don't have any Martins? Well, yeah, I got a couple of Martins, and I'll play a couple of them for you today, including this one, which is pretty nuts. So I thought today I'd kind of focus in on the Martins that are in the shop, at least a couple of them. This one just came in the other day. I tell you folks, it's amazing. I'm here in my shop, and it's kind of like going fishing. You know, there's always stuff to do. There's always stuff that the strings always need changing on something. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. As soon as you're done, you got to start all over again. There's always stuff to do. But the coolest thing of all is when I take a little break, and there was a fella came in right before closing the other day and said, I got a guitar I'd like to consign. You do consignments, don't you? I said, yeah, all these guitars are on consignment here. These are all consignment guitars. He said, you got room for one more? And I said, well, I don't know. We're kind of full up at the moment, but tell me, what do you have? And the last thing I expected him to say was, a 1905 Martin 0042. But that's what it is. Check it out. This is from 1905. It's a 0042. Now, the Martin specification system, some of you know, some of you don't. Those of you that know, you can go have a little coffee break and come back in 2 seconds. The Martin specification system is, you frequently hear a letter followed by a number. Or you'll hear a D18, or you'll hear an OM 28. You know, there's two designations typically. The first one sometimes is letters. The ones afterwards are typically numbers. Sometimes there are letters in the numbers as well. We won't get into that. 00 essentially means about the size of a classical guitar. It's a good place to start the examination of Martin guitars. 00 is about the size of a classical guitar. Above that size-wise are triple O's and OMs, which are essentially the same body size, different scale length and different width of the fingerboard. Above that is a designation that is considerably more rare, the quadruple O, also kind of known as the M series from the 1980s and a reissue as well. And then the D series at the top, dreadnoughts. And like I say, even though there's lots and lots of builders represented here, a lot of them use the Martin designation system. Well, this is a real live Martin. So the 00 refers to the size below the 00 is the single O size. I got one of those too over here. I'll show you. Here is a single O right back here. Even smaller. Below this are guitars that are... Ducky, can you see this guitar right back here in the camera? Yeah. Very good. That one back there is a size 2. So below the 00 are the O's, size 2 and size 1, size 2.5. Those are the real life parlor guitars, as I think I perhaps mentioned last week. Anything below an O, typically, is called a parlor guitar, although today, nowadays, anything that's kind of below certainly the size of an OM or a triple O, is often referred to as a parlor guitar. But the real life parlor guitars are below, the size is below double O. Enough nerding out for you? Good, let's press on. I wanted to play this one for you in particular, because it's just really quite remarkable. They're both lovely guitars, but this one, can you believe that this is from 1905? It's a 1905 double O, so about the size of a classical guitar. The specifications on this one are a 42, which means 42 means pretty premium. You're getting things pretty fancy. 42 among the 42 components means you've got this lovely pearl all around the face, and bound fingerboard, and man, oh my, isn't it really something? This is a lovely spruce top and Brazilian rosewood back and sides. This guitar was expertly kind of put back together several years ago in Nashville, and it's in great shape. He opened up the case and I said, "Did you say 1905?" It's been refinished a couple of times, actually. The first time it was refinished, it was taken down to the original, taken down and then redone to the original specifications, which would have been French polish, which is a hand-on polish, alcohol-based. And the gentleman that ended up purchasing it said, "You know, I'm not so crazy about the French polish. I'd like to have a lacquer put on it." So it went back to Martin again, and again, an expert job doing a refinish. This has got a really light, kind of matte lacquer finish. Not Matt Lauer. Matte lacquer. And it sounds great. It's strung really lightly. It's got silk and steel strings, which is kind of what's specified for guitars of this era. Something really, really light in the bronze realm, or silk and steel. And even with silk and steel, for those of you fellow guitar geeks, and I assume most of you are kind of geeks if you're geeking out with us here, you know that silk and steel typically has a really kind of a mellow, nice, kind of folky, friendly sort of sound. This one is really dynamic. It's really quite remarkable. Even as I'm playing it, I'm saying, really? That's silk and steel strings? And it's got some rumble to it as well. That low bass note, I can really feel my lungs rattling in my chest, and I love that. Give me the visceral hits all day long, please. But how rude I am. Are there any questions? Ducky, any questions yet? Nothing yet? Okay, good. Feel free to ask any questions you like. Make any requests you like. If there's anything you see on the inventory, while you're on the internets there, run on over to mightyfineguitars.com if you like, and hit the inventory link there, and let me know if there's anything you see there that you'd like to have me demo for you live here. This is what it's all about. We're going to do kind of slightly shorter Friday noon webcast today, probably just about a half hour or so. But if there's anything in particular you'd really like to see, let me know. It's really kind of, there's some details on this guitar that are a little bit too little for the camera to see, I suppose. But even the buttons are beautifully inlaid. It's quite remarkable. And it smells really good. Brazilian rosewood has this kind of floral, rosy scent to it. That's why they call it rosewood. Oh my. I wish we had scratch and sniff options available for you, but we do not. That is so Martin-y, and you Martin heads will know what I'm talking about. Well, yes.
A couple of bars of freight train on the old Martin.
A couple of bars of freight train? Well, my goodness. Very good. Glad to. There's a couple of bars of freight train. So nice. Reset is fantastic. It intonates beautifully. One of the things that was done to this guitar in the refurb was putting on a new walrus ivory bridge, and this bridge is compensated. The original bridge would not have been compensated. It's more geekery, which is to say that the bridge would have gone straight across the lower bout here instead of being kicked slightly, so that the high strings are a bit shorter than the low strings. And this means the guitar intonates a whole lot better, so that you can play up the neck out of first position. Lots of guitars, almost any guitar, will sound pretty okay in first position, but once you start moving up out of the shallow end of the pool there, things can sound pretty froggy, and not in a good way. We've got a froggy bottom here I want to demo for you as well, if the guitar is not intonated well. So that's one of the improvements that was made on this. That's not original, but it is a big improvement. This is such a lovely touch as well. The pins, the bridge pins, are bone and have double rings of inlay. I'll hold real still in case you can come in on there. Folks, how about a hand for Shigor, Mistress of the Machines, my own fiancée, Miss Valerie May. Thank you, Ducky. She says, thank you. Great. And it's just a lovely thing. It's, as we get older, and who isn't, after all, sometimes a smaller guitar works better than a bigger guitar. You know, gravity works the same on everybody and everything. Sometimes the elbows and the shoulders don't work the way they used to. Sometimes wrapping yourself around a big dreadnought guitar that's got a really wide lower bout and a really wide waist just doesn't work. You feel like Kilroy sitting behind a big dreadnought guitar sometimes. Double O is kind of a nice return for a lot of us to the size guitar that we played first. A lot of us started off on classical guitars, nylon strung guitars, and this is that size. It's a very friendly sort of size. It's well, this one's got a little extra punch to it, you know. It's got a little edge. It's got dynamic range, which a lot of small guitars have a reputation for being kind of small in sound. You can't really get a lot of sound out of them. There's not a range of tones available. This is a complete thoroughbred. This one knows where you want to go tonally before you do, and it's ready to respond. Oh, there's just a whole field of sound that rolls out of this guitar. It's quite remarkable. Well, pressing on. Any questions, comments before we move on to another guitar? We're cool?
I'm just stunned by that.
I know, it's just stunning, isn't it? It's a fabulous, fabulous guitar. And like I say, folks, I just sit here. I never know what's going to walk in the door. You know, a lot of the guitars that are here, people say, who let this guitar go? Why in heaven's name would anybody sell this guitar? Well, a lot of the folks that bring in the guitars are collectors of some sort, or have multiple fabulous guitars and feel really badly that for whatever reason, one of their fabulous guitars just doesn't get played. So I call those guitars, and there are lots of them in here, I call them karma guitars, where the owner is feeling a bit of a karmic pinch because he or she has this fabulous instrument that's not getting played, wants to get it into the arms of someone who wants to love it. And that's why I have so many of these remarkable guitars are here, even if I do say so myself. So here's this is the 1905 0042, just came in, walked in the door just before closing, night before last, quite remarkable. Let me play right next to it for you. Here's an O, I'll be right back. Hang on there, kids. Here's an O that came in. This is an O28, Adirondack top, Madagascar back and sides, quite remarkable. It's got that 1/4-inch bracing, it's hide glue construction, scalloped X bracing. It's from about, I think this is just 2 years old. I'll have to look it up on the chart and see what the age is on this one. And this one is made to accommodate full-on bronze strings. This is not a silk and steel set on here. This is a regular set of phosphor bronze strings. This is on an O. What a little sweetie. Martins, not so bad. Questions, comments? Pipe right up, folks. Let me know if there are any. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make up something really convincing. So 2 Martins, 0042 and an 028. The 28 designation means spruce top and rosewood back and sides. That's the basic sort of situation there. There's some lovely purfling on this, though, that's kind of custom and fancy and really pretty. And again, a guitar that doesn't know it's a little guitar. It thinks it's a dreadnought, thinks it's a big old beast, and it's like one of those little dogs. It doesn't know it's a little dog, just barks at everything. Wonderful guitars. Martins. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I thought I'd talk with you today about Steve Kaufman and Steve Klein guitars, which are very different. For example, here is a Klein guitar designed by Steve Klein and co-designed in certain respects by Steve Kaufman. Kaufman does the building, mostly. This is a remarkably different guitar from what I was just playing. And some frightfully exotic tuning. Somebody has left this in. And, perhaps I'll swing into some other slightly less frightfully exotic tuning that I'm familiar with, because that's where these guitars really shine. Really radical building style here. Steve Klein, back in the 70s and 80s, applied some of the principles of Kasia, who was a famous acoustician that worked primarily with classical guitars, to steel string guitars. And in the meantime, I'll give you a look at this while I'm gabbing at you. Myrtle back and sides, of all things. A remarkably light guitar for its size. This one feels like it's been sprayed with anti-grav. It's remarkable. And Port Orford cedar on the top here. Ebony fingerboard, kind of a fairly steep angle across to the peg head here, which is part of the sound, I think. This is one of the things about these little guitars. Often have slotted headstocks. And one of the reasons for that, according to Judy over at Martin, is, and it makes perfect sense, is that steeper break angle across the nut from where the string dives down into the peg head and connects to one of the tuners. The steeper break angle across that nut puts more down pressure on the guitar and makes it feel a little bit stiffer, gives a little bit more resistance, lets you hit it a little bit harder for more punch. And that's sort of what's happening here as well. Really long scale on this to accommodate alternate tunings. When you tune a string down, perhaps you've noticed on your guitar, if you don't have a particularly long scale guitar, that as you tune that string down, as you fret up on one of the lower strings, sometimes the intonation is not so very good. A longer scale guitar helps with that. So if you're an alternate tunings person and you're playing a short scale guitar, perhaps you ought to consider something a little longer. This has got some features that were considered budget back in the 50s, including primarily this zero fret. I may have talked about this before, I want to talk about it again, just because it's such a bugaboo. Some people say, my goodness, that guitar has a zero fret. I remember all those really cheap German pseudo archtops from the 50s had zero frets, and I don't like them. Well, wish you'd reconsider. This is quite remarkable in that I certainly need to see where I am here. Help me out here. Shout these notes out. Anybody there have perfect pitch? Cool tuning. I have no idea what it is. Dunno, but it's hip. I'll swing into something a little less exotic here. A question? A comment?
How does one know what type of string a guitar is suited for, regarding your comment about silk and steel, or in this case, phosphor bronze?
Ah, good question. A question about strings and what should go on what kind of guitar. Most acoustic guitars, modern guitars in particular, can accommodate bronze strings. Either phosphor bronze is frequently used, or an 80-20 blend, or nickel-silver strings. They can use full-on what are referred to as steel strings. The silk and steel strings are different. They're much lower tension and much better for ancient guitars like the 1905 over there, where it was before guitars were braced heavily enough to accommodate full-on steel strings. And on a guitar of that vintage, you probably want to go something extra, extra light. You perhaps can get away with that, but probably safer all in all to go with a silk and steel, where the core of the bass strings, of the wound strings, is a fiber instead of a little hunk of steel, instead of a wire. Good question. Thank you. Keep them coming. Did I answer your question properly, whoever asked that? interesting. So that was D, B, E, G, A, E, D. Interesting. I'm going to have to go back and look at this video and see what that tuning was that I called out and mess with it. It was kind of cool. The Klein guitar is built by Steve Kaufman. Kaufman built all but the first 20 Klein guitars. A little known fact, but something that bears mentioning, I think. And in a couple of moments I'll play for you the Kaufman guitar again that I played for you in a previous week. And then we'll press on to some other guitars. That's a B. D, B, E. These guitars respond really well when you get a couple, sometimes in this tuning is dadgad tuning, nothing too exotic. When you swing a guitar into an alternate tuning, if you've got multiple strings tuned to the same frequency or multiple of the same frequency in octaves, you get all of those notes, and even if you're slightly out of tune, as a guitar always is, let's face it, you get those overtones swirling against each other and reinforcing and canceling each other, giving you a little bit of phase cancellation and amplification. It's kind of cool. And this guitar just... Good heavens. You can feel it as you approach tuning. I don't know if you can hear it. This guitars need tuning. Sorry, it's just kind of part and parcel of the scene. But as I tune this, and you get close to the note, you can feel the guitar sort of say, "Oh, you're so close. Crank it up or crank it down, or crank it down and then crank it up is the correct way." And when it's right in tune, the guitar just lights up. Those overtones amplify on top of each other and really rock it out of the guitar. And it's so satisfying to play. Yes, I think there's a question, or else.
Quick comment: Jim Houston has a 23 Martin 2-17.
Ah.
Hasn't liked anything he's put on it so far, but we'll try silk and steel.
Jim Houston has a 1920s era 217. 17, refresh me. That's Jim. Are you still on there? Is that mahogany top? As I recall, a 17 is a mahogany top. I know the 15s are, and I believe the 17s are as well. Can you respond and let me know if that's a mahogany top, because that might affect some choices here. Have you tried the 80-20 set? On small-bodied guitars, I typically prefer, I go with the Eric Schoenberg principle. If it's smaller than a triple O, and even then probably, I like an 80-20. I prefer it to a phosphor bronze. For a big guitar, for a jumbo or a dreadnought, something where I want lots of saturation, lots of chordal stuff, or even single note stuff, kind of bluegrassy style. I like a phosphor bronze for that, but typically, except on my two guitars, strangely enough, I typically prefer an 80-20 string, which will kind of light up a smaller body guitar. So, Ducky, let me know if Jim comes back with a response on that. A 17, I'm spacing out at the moment, and I can't recall. I think that probably has mahogany top. A 2 is a little guitar. There's not a lot going on. Bracing-wise, 2, the consideration is, with a 2, you're getting down into a tiny little guitar, 1920s era, not too hip on what a 217 would have been built like. But often on a 2, because they're not kind of in high demand these days, you wouldn't be taking a lot of the resale value, if that's a consideration for you, off of a 2. if you got in there and found somebody like we have here in the Bay Area, and Jim, if you're in the Bay Area, let me recommend to you a builder named John Mello up in Kensington, who takes braces down on little guitars and does a great job. There was an O that I had here in the shop way out at the outset. It was bought by a lovely gentleman in the neighborhood here, where John Mello had gotten in there and carved down the braces and really brought the guitar to life. It may not be just the strings that's a consideration. Yes, Ducky, did Jim get back to us there?
All mahogany, top, back, sides, neck, whole enchilada.
Whole enchilada is mahogany, as I thought. Right. Mahogany behaves differently, of course, from spruce as a top, and I'm guessing perhaps it's the bracing. That it would be a little bit radical, but if you could find somebody that could get in there and carve down those braces for you and take out some of the excess wood. Sometimes those guitars were built, in fact a lot of guitars, the little guitars, were built with the same thickness of wood that were used on the bigger guitars. And depending on whether or not it was a Monday guitar or a Friday guitar at the Martin factory, things were not entirely totally standardized then. And you might have ended up with a guitar that was a bit overbuilt. Let me ask you, since I got you on the horn here, Jim, does it feel heavy? Does the guitar feel a bit heavier than it ought to for its size? I'm guessing perhaps it does. Mahogany top guitars can have a tendency to look that way, and the perception is that they're heavier. But if the guitar is a bit overbuilt, you may want to have somebody get in there and scrub down with a little tiny knife and scrub down the braces and thin it out and make it a little more lively for you. That might be the way to go. An idea. Well, let me play something else for you here. Remarkable stuff that walked in recently. Here is a Breedlove of all things. There's lots of Breedloves in here. Breedlove has horribly confused their buying public. I think I may have mentioned this on a previous webcast as well, but it bears repeating because guitars like this come in. People think, Stevie, you have Breedloves in your shop? I thought Breedloves were those import guitars that you can get for $400, $500, $600. And I must say, those import guitars at $400, $500, or $600 are totally worthy. Breedloves, yes, they do have the Breedlove name. To go into the whole flow chart of who did what when and who bought what when and who called the company what when would not be time well spent. Just know that Breedlove can mean anything from totally hand-built premium woods guitars like this to those $400 and $500, $600 import guitars that are pretty darn good and really actually great value for the money. But Breedlove is a company that's based in Oregon. That if I was going to carry guitars, excuse me, if I was going to carry lines of guitars rather than just consignment stuff, I would seriously consider hanging with Breedlove. I think they're tremendously underrated, and partially because of that confusion with the lesser guitars. Underrated and underviewed, underplayed guitars. People see Breedloves. A lot of Breedloves tend to have a fairly radical look to them. Where is that? Oh, yes. I'll be right back. Again. Breedloves tend to have a fairly radical look to them. Just to say the bridges and configuration of the guitar can get kind of pointy and strange looking to some people's eyes. Other folks really love it. I happen to think they're really cool looking guitars. Here's a Breedlove that has a redwood top and sides and zirconia, redwood top rather, and zirconia back and sides. Remarkable guitar and beautiful, just gorgeous. But a lot of people look at this bridge and say, "Oh, that's a little too radical for me. I can't hang with that." So Breedlove has occasionally done kind of a series of they call it the Revival series, where they do a much more traditional looking build, like this. Excuse me, I'll be right back. Much more traditional, kind of your basic dreadnought sort of look. But check this out. Some wildly figured sapele and an Adirondack top. There are only 2 of these actually ever made. And let me read you this little thing that came with it. This is a custom Breedlove Revival Series guitar with a traditional deep dreadnought body, pre-war bracing, forward-shifted bracing and thin, scalloped, wonderful Adirondack spruce top. The body on this instrument is built with some very rare, highly figured sapele that is unlike anything ever seen, with beautiful color and grain. Breedlove only had enough of this rare figured sapele to build 2 instruments in this shape. And if I understand correctly, I think David Knopfler has the other one. And here's the other one. A solid mahogany neck, ebony fretboard, snowflake inlay, rosewood headstock cover, Grover tuners, classic dreadnought in every sense of the word, upgraded with features that make it identical to those pre-war Martins in look and performance. And it really does. This feels, if somebody handed me this in a blind taste test, I'd say, oh, old Martin, you know, with the exception of the neck being in great shape and totally smooth. I'd say, oh, feels and sounds like an old Martin. It's kind of slung together for big. Guess that I'm playing a Breedlove here. First of all, they typically don't do traditional dreadnought style body, which is this kind of very square-shouldered, wide-waisted, wide lower bout style guitar. They're much more frequently known for the other style of guitar that I showed you. Much smaller body, round ear, thinner. But my goodness, this sounds like an old Martin. And like I say, only one of two ever made. I'm quite pleased to have this in the shop. I just never know what's going to walk in. It's quite remarkable. Also, I wanted to show you a new guitar from Tony Yamamoto. I gotta tell you, I have sold more Yamamotos than anything else out of this shop. Pound for pound, great value, really remarkable. This is Paulonia on the top. Some of you may be hip to Paulonia and some maybe not. It's a Malaysian wood that in traditional Japanese societies, when a girl baby is born, I've told this story before, when a girl baby is born, they plant a Paulonia tree. The parents plant a Paulonia tree, and when she gets married, they chop it down and build her first batch of furniture out of it. That's such a romantic story, I can't stand it. Well, Tony Yamamoto, a gentleman here in the San Francisco Bay Area, thought, he wondered to himself whether or not that wood would sound good on guitars. He'd seen it occasionally on trim, I believe, on kotos and whatnot, and I've seen it on some samurai warrior gear, but certainly never built up into a guitar. He built a totally Sapele guitar, Sapele all the way around, and had a bunch of people play it. Thomas Lieb and Muriel Anderson, Taya Gherkin. I got to play it. He videotaped everybody, and we all said, holy smokes, what you got going on here? So this top wood is Paulonia. It's extremely lightweight stuff, really remarkable. This one is, I haven't seen one of these before. I think this is the first one he's done in maple. And my goodness, it doesn't, again, a guitar that doesn't sound like you'd think it would. Another surprise guitar. This guitar, rather, I should say maple guitars tend to have a reputation for being kind of brittle and lots of fundamental, not very rich, not very deep, but really get the notes out there quick and fast, lots of fundamental, and lots of quick decay, so the notes don't hang around too often. This one is, here, before I actually play, let me show you this again. A wedge-shaped body. Notice how much wider it is here than it is over here, so that under your arm, the guitar just leans right into you, but there's still lots of air volume inside to make the guitar sound big and full and whatnot. This is a bolt-on neck, an angulated bolt-on neck. And this little kind of old Epiphone style curve I think is really elegant and lovely. And the trim is in Koa. A three-piece maple neck, of all things. Really stiff, really straight, not going to go anywhere. And some rosewood appointments. Wonderful guitar. Here's what it sounds like. Never a guess in a million years associate maple with either old J200s or jazz guitars frequently. There we go. I love being surprised. What can I tell you? I just love being surprised by the sounds of guitars. Maple sounds like this, feels like this. It's just so comfy. I love this style. Tony calls this the Talus. But I get ahead of myself. Any questions? Any comments? We're good? All right, very good. Do you know, folks, I want to tell you a little bit more about the shop as well. We do shows here. If you feel like it, tonight, I haven't firmed this up with the gentleman who's playing here tonight. Garen Benfield is going to be playing right in the room in back here. We jokingly call the big room because it seats 85 people. Garen Benfield is going to come play tonight, and I'm going to ask him. We're going to firm up plans to do a little webcast. So if you feel like it, tune back in to the Mighty Fine Guitars Facebook page tonight, along about 8 o'clock, maybe shortly thereafter, PDT, Pacific Daylight Time, of course. And we'll see if we can't broadcast a little Garen Benfield show for you. Should be really fun. And these videos persist. This isn't like Concert Window or Stage It, both of which are totally worthy adventures. These videos are not just for those that happen to be online at the time the videos are being shot. These videos stick around. And actually, somehow magically, I have not figured out how, they get better after time. When they first go up, they're a little sketchy, the video's not so great, the audio's not so great, and then something happens, and they get better, they get cooked, and they improve. So if you're having spotty reception now on video or audio, come back later, everything will be gorgeous and lovely, considering the subject, as gorgeous as it can get. And that'll happen tonight for Garen Benfield's show as well. And we'll try and make that a fairly regular thing, at least broadcast a little bit of the people that are coming in to play here. Garen Benfield is coming in. Eric Lugash is coming in, thrilled. Chris Proctor is coming in. Paul Asbell is coming in soon. Head on over if you can put a bookmark in, and if you've got a little browser window to spare right now, run on over to mightyfineguitars.com and look at the concerts listing there and see what's happening. Don Ross, I booked Don Ross for January. Remarkable. These people coming and playing in my little room, I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled to feature this kind of insane talent in a little tiny intimate space, so come on by. I wanted to tell you about the shows. I wanted to tell you about the webcasts. What else was on our do list, Ducky? There was other stuff I was going to pipe up about, wasn't there?
Advice to buy a guitar.
Oh, advice about buying guitars. Here's the best advice I can give. I frequently give a little talk I have given frequently, as often as they came around at the Healdsburg Guitar Festival and other venues. Sometimes I've given a little talk on how to buy a guitar. My advice, especially in a shop like this, is come in and play everything and wait for, as the Harry Potter kids say, wait for the wand to choose the wizard. You can talk all about the size of the guitar, the woods. Size really is kind of a primary consideration, so I'd say for a lot of us, find a guitar size that you like and then kind of focus in on that. For a lot of folks, the Triple O does everything beautifully, and I tend to agree. That's kind of the Eric Schoenberg principle that Triple O, the OM size, is great for just about everything and is a great do-it-all kind of guitar. I happen to prefer a double O myself for the size and the configuration of the way it projects and whatnot. Smaller guitars are typically really great. A question?
Ian Bagger would
Yeah.
like to have you take for a spin this lovely resonator behind you.
Oh, a resonator. Not my long suit, but I'll play what I can for you. In the meantime, talking about buying guitars, play a bunch and play a whole bunch. Play every guitar you see and see if one jumps up and bites you on the butt and says, I'm yours, you just got to find the money for me. That's ideally what you're looking for is a love affair. And if you can put yourself in the way of lots and lots of possibilities for love affairs, if you've played a million Evil Empire Martins and Taylors and whatnot and Gibsons and this and that, not to say your true love might not be there. It might be there. But if you can come into little shops where there's lots and lots of variety and see if something just absolutely grabs you, that's what you're looking for. I always recommend to folks, look for the X factor. Look for the part of loving a guitar that you can't articulate. If you can say, well, I love the bracing, I love the size, I love the way the neck feels, getting a little closer to reality there. I love the way it feels under my arm, the way it sounds when I first strum it. All of that stuff. That's sneaking up on the true love, where all of a sudden you can't even articulate what it is you love about the guitar. That's the one to buy. That's the one to pinch your pennies for and get. Because, as my grandma from vaudeville used to say, things are really expensive, but the most expensive thing of all is regret. And I think she's right. I think she's right. There was Ian Bagger, a gentleman I met down at, who's online with you right there, a wonderful fellow. He and I met at Griffin Stringed Instruments, where I used to work, and then I taught there for many years. And there was a fellow there who used to wander around, not a great guitar player, but a great ear on this guy. And he'd just kind of be, hanging around the shop, and he'd see somebody sitting on a stool there, bent over the guitar, and just kind of beads of sweat popping off him like an R. Crumb cartoon. There's some kind of major upset going on. He'd walk over and say, "What's up? What's up?" The fellow says, "Oh, I love this guitar. I just love it." And he says, "What's the problem?" And the fellow would say, "Oh, I'd look at the sticker." He'd say, "Oh, man, look at that sticker." And this guy, Ron, my pal Ron, would just stop and say, "You know what? You're going to be dead a really long time." And he just let that sink in. It's kind of true. On the one hand, it's the cheesiest sale close in the world. On the other hand, it's the truest thing you can say to anybody, including yourself. As they say, as you see on the Facebooks all the time, if not now, when? So, one of those things. Regret is the most expensive thing of all. And why regret? If the means are there and you find something you truly love, that's how to buy a guitar. Amen. Now, I'll play this resonator guitar back here. This is one of several resonators I have in the shop right now. There are two National Duolians, metal body guitars. There's an O, a style O, a newish one, and there's a 20s era tricone square neck, which is totally hip, totally great. I'll play this one for you. Let's see what kind of tuning we're in. Oh, standard tuning. How exotic. That's what I'm after. Is this distorting the microphone? I just realized this guitar is so much louder than the other ones. Do we have any distortion problems, Ian? Hit me if this is distorting. I feel like Miss Nancy on Romper Room, and I see Ian, and I see Jimmy, and I see... This one, yes, please.
Ian said it might want you to play Little Martha in that tuning.
Oh my goodness, Little Martha. See if that one. This is all muscle memory, and I'm not sure I have this up here. Maybe in the back of my brain I got How's that for a stumble through? Resonator guitar. Instead of the sound being produced strictly from the activation of the top by the bridge, here you've got a resonator right underneath the ostensible bridge. A really thin piece of spun aluminum. Looks, like a hubcap on the outside, and underneath it's not too much different from an old Chrysler hubcap. And it's a mechanical amplification means. Instead of amplifying things with electricity, which is what kind of killed these off for a while, was the advent of electrically amplified instruments. This was kind of what was coming into band situations, something loud enough that could compete with horns and wind instruments and full-on drum kits and whatnot before electrical, amplification was the thing. And this one's kind of cool because the gentleman that owns this has it strung up with old nickel strings, which is what they would have been strung up with way back when. A little bit different sound, a little less harmonically rich, a little bit more direct, a little more fundamental than phosphor bronze strings. It's kind of cool. This one's a dobro, and talk about weird flow charts. The flow chart between the National Guitar Company and the dobro family, that getting handed back and forth and suing the various lawsuits and whatnot as you move through time is the subject of a big fat book. And this is, at this point, this is a real live dobro, Do Piero Brothers, round neck, Spanish style guitar. They've made lots of the square neck ones, which are played on the lap like this, and we call those resonator guitars now, rezos, lap style resonators, because the dobro name is still, copyright or whatever. But this is a real live dobro from 1936, and it's in great shape, and it makes all this sound. Any buskers out there, any people that play on the street corners for passersby and whatnot, you could busk all four corners at the same time with this guitar. It's loud enough. So just an idea from your Uncle Stevie. Well, I think we're getting a little close on time. We sure are. Any comments or questions? We good? We good? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Another hand, please, for Shigor, Mistress of the Machines. Miss Valerie May. Thanks a lot. And like I say, tune in next week for Glenn Pomyanic Houston from late of the band Houston Jones. Plays guitar upside down and backwards and real good. You will be astonished. I'll see if Glenn will bring in his electric as well as his acoustic. And he and I will do a couple of things together. We have formed a band, a little duo we're calling The Quitters. So stay tuned for thequittersband.com. We'll have our own .com here pretty soon, and I'll hip you to that. And we'll be heading out and doing some shows together. That'll be, but he'll be featured here next week at noon. Stop in, noon PDT every Friday. Come heck or high water. We'll have special guests. Next week's special guest is Glenn Pomyanic. Tonight at the shop and online, please tune in for Garen Benfield, who does looping. If you're not hip to looping, it's pretty cool. Typically what Garen will do is build on the spot a whole orchestra of sounds for you using a little device, a looper pedal, where he can lay down a little percussion track, put down a little bass on top of that, a little rhythm guitar, some horn stabs. He'll build a whole band right before your very ears. And totally entertaining, great songwriter as well, and a really cool guy. So stop in if you can, virtually or actually, to the show tonight here. We're located at 85 Lafayette Circle in bucolic Lafayette, California. We're a half a mile from the freeway, not even a half a mile to BART. It's an easy walk, two long blocks to BART. Stop on by any old time. Even if I do say so myself, there's preposterously cool stuff in here. Come and play it all and see if one of the guitars jumps up and bites you on the butt and says I'm yours and you have to have it. And a true love affair will be born. And I'll be pleased to be in the middle of that. So stop on by when you can. Thanks a lot. Great to see you. Stevie Coyle here from Mighty Fine Guitars. Ta-ta.